My name is Ross Hawkins. I'm going to do an outline for a documentary that I'm producing called Fred Parrish, the Man Behind the Camera. Fred A. Parrish was born in Boscobel, Wisconsin. Boscobel is the birthplace of the Gideon Bible. It's on the Wisconsin River, and he was born in 1892 in an area that's considered to be one of the most beautiful and pristine regions of Wisconsin. Boscobel plays host to the annual Muskets and Memories Civil War reenactment during the first week in August. This event has become one of the largest and most popular Civil War reenactments in the upper Midwest, attracting more than 1,000 participants and over 8,000 spectators each year. The event honors and supports Boscobel's John McDermott Post number 101, Grand Armory of the Republic Hall, a repository of rare Civil War memorabilia, which is open to the public during the event. It's a fascinating coincidence that Boscobel native Fred Parrish would earn fame and fortune as the photographer who shot more than 10,000 black and white and color photographs of the production of the most famous Civil War motion picture ever made, Gone with the Wind. Parrish's father was a druggist. His mother died when he was 4 years old, and he was sent to live with his maternal grandmother. At age 10, he moved back home when his father remarried. As a young boy, Parrish was something of a loner. Fred bought his first camera at age 10 and spent most of his time and money taking and developing pictures. He didn't get along with his stepmother, who resented his spending time and money on his photography. Fred ran away from home at age 14. He rode a freight car to Mason City, Iowa, where he stayed for 3 years, landing a job at a brickyard where he worked with full-grown men. Fred keenly observed that the main difference between the laborers in the yard and the bosses was a matter of education. Parrish later recalled, "I took pictures of them and they bought the stuff. I saved enough money to go back and finish high school. I figured out there wasn't any future in a brickyard for me." Parrish returned to Wisconsin and enrolled at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, where he studied medicine. At a fraternity dance, he photographed a young man named Fred March. Years later, he would photograph March again as the famed actor Frederick March, when he co-starred with Janet Gaynor in David O. Selznick's production of A Star is Born, and in the same year with Carole Lombard in Nothing Sacred. While he attended the University of Wisconsin, Parrish became the official photographer of sporting events and worked part-time in a photographic laboratory. He purchased his first motion picture camera in 1912 and tried to convince local businesses in Madison that motion pictures would be a great advertising medium. They turned him down. While he was still a student, Parrish became the official photographer for the state of Wisconsin. It turned out that medicine had no appeal for Parrish, so he picked up some motion picture equipment and headed for Texas. In San Antonio, he began filming local events and selling his film for newsreel footage. At the outbreak of World War I, Parrish joined a machine gun battalion, which was commanded by General Leonard Wood. Wood had fought against the great Apache Indian chief Geronimo in 1886 and commanded the 1st Volunteer Cavalry during the Spanish-American War. World War I inspired Parrish to produce his first motion picture, The Fighting 32nd, a division composed of National Guardsmen from Wisconsin and Michigan. Parrish saw action in France and was overheard to say in later years that after serving as a machine gunner in the war, he wasn't afraid of anyone in Hollywood. After the war, Parrish was a newsreel cameraman for Pathé and Fox Movie-Tone News. Among the stories he covered was a bloody prison riot at Canyon City Penitentiary in Colorado. The shootout between the guards and rioting prisoners was some of the most vivid sequences filmed up to that time. In 1927, he married a girl named Darlene Mooney, a native of Colorado Springs, Colorado. By that time, Fred was operating his own laboratory and taught Darlene how to process both motion pictures and still films. Through that experience she gained in helping her husband, she obtained a newsreel card in 1928 and began photographing for MGM News and Eastman teaching films. It is Darlene Parrish's distinction that she was the first woman to work for MGM News as a fully credited cameraman. In 1928, Fred and Darlene traveled to Africa to photograph animals, scenery, and tribal life. The expedition was sponsored by Harvard University, and the footage they shot was used in newsreels and educational films. They returned to the States in 1931, and Fred went to work as a still photographer for RKO, where David Selznick had just been named head of production. That year, Parrish shot the first publicity stills of Katharine Hepburn and Lucille Ball. When Selznick formed his own studio in 1935, Parrish went with him and was the still photographer on Prisoner of Zenda, A Star is Born, Nothing Sacred, and Tom Sawyer. For Gone with the Wind, Parrish documented about every scene and shot behind the scenes, as well as set and costume photos. He shot more than 950 behind-the-scenes photos from Gone with the Wind. This collection remains the most extensive still work for any motion picture ever made. Parrish also later worked at Republic Pictures, shooting stills of Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, and other cowboy heroes of the 1940s. Fred Parrish was an inventor working on a 3D process as early as 1940. Stuntman and Culver City local Carl Pitti worked with Parrish on a 3D camera in 1952, which Parrish attempted to sell to MGM for their 3D Western epic Escape from Fort Bravo with William Holden. Parrish also built a camera car that he rented to the studio for outdoor action film. He was a good friend of famed cinematographer James Wong Howe, who filmed such classics as HUD and Body and Soul. Parrish lived in Culver City for many years and was a next-door neighbor of Martha and Woody Tolkien. He died at Brotman Hospital in July 1980.